Despite what his wife said to him every night when he came home from work, Yohei continued moaning and groaning about the situation in the village. He hated it. I hate living in this place. People keep gossiping about us, keep pointing at me, giggling, making fun of me. All because I haven't got a piece of land, I haven't got any animals. People don't look up to me. They don't respect me. It was the same when I grew up here. I hate it. I want to leave. His wife said, "Be patient, Yohei. Remember what I said. If we save a little money from your wages every day, eventually you'll be able to buy a piece of land and you'll be able to buy some animals and we'll be able to improve our situation here in the village." But he didn't listen. Every evening it was the same. So one evening, his wife, who was completely fed up with his complaining and groaning, just said to him, "Yohei, I have a secret which I've never shared with you." "Well, what is it?" "I can weave cloth. All the women in the village weave cloth. That's impossible for us. We haven't got a loom. We haven't got any threads. No, that's my secret. I have a gift for weaving cloth. And we don't need to buy a loom or different threads. But I can only weave a roll of cloth once for you. You'll be able to take it to the market, sell it at a very good price, and then you'll be able to use that money to buy a piece of land and some animals." Yohei was absolutely thrilled. He said, "Why didn't you tell me this before?" "Because it's a special secret. And it's a gift that I am not allowed to use really more than once." Yohei was amazed by this. And he said to her, "When can you start? When can you weave some cloth?" "Let's wait till tomorrow evening. I need 3 days and 3 nights to weave the cloth. And when I go into the back room to weave it, and you shut the sliding doors, I want you to sit outside, and I never ever want you to look in. And I don't want anyone to disturb me while I'm weaving." What shall I say to the neighbours if they come to the door?" "Make up an excuse. Say that I've gone to see my mother in the next village because she's ill and I need to assist her and care for her." That's fine. Yohei was delighted. He was prepared to do anything to protect his wife from any interference or any interruption. So the next evening after supper, she went into the back room. He slid the doors shut behind her, and he sat cross-legged in front of the doors. And he decided that he would sit there for 3 days and 3 nights and protect his wife. As soon as he'd shut the doors and sat outside the room, he heard a rhythmical noise. Tonkara, 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 tonkara. Just like a loom. As if she was pressing her feet on some pedal and making this noise. He thought about it and thought it very strange because there was no loom in the room. He didn't even have any threads or cotton. After a while, he fell asleep. And when he woke up in the middle of the night, he could still hear tonkara, 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 tonkara. And he just couldn't believe that his wife was still weaving. The next day, people came to the cottage. They knocked at the door and they said, "Yohei, is your wife there? Because I want to borrow just a little milk. We've run out of milk." And he said, "I'm sorry, my wife's gone to the next village to see her mum. She's very, very ill, and she's decided to look after and care for her mother, so she won't be back for 3 days. I'm sorry." And when the neighbours visited the house and then left because his wife wasn't there, they still gossiped. They said his wife's left him. His wife's gone back to her village. She's not coming back. She's suddenly discovered how silly he is and what a stupid man she's married. And they were already spreading rumours that his wife had left him, not knowing that she was actually in the back room weaving a special cloth for him. Every day neighbours still came, knocked to the door, and he made up the same excuses, and they left again, and the rumours continued. At the end of 3 days and 3 nights, Yohei slid the doors open and he ran into the room and saw a roll of cloth on the floor. He immediately unrolled it, and it was the most beautiful cloth he'd ever seen. A beautiful white, absolutely smooth, seamless. You couldn't see the threads joined up when you looked closely at the cloth. It was really the most beautiful cloth he'd seen. He couldn't believe it. And in his rush and his eagerness to see the cloth, he'd ignored his wife, who was standing there. And suddenly he turned and saw her and said, "My dear, I'm so sorry. I was just so eager to see the cloth." And when he looked at her, he noticed she was incredibly pale. And if he wasn't mistaken, she was thinner than when she'd gone into the room. And he thought, well, she hasn't slept or eaten or drunk for 3 days and 3 nights. No wonder. And so he rushed into the kitchen and he got together some food, put it on the table and said, "Look, sit down. Have a nice breakfast. Relax, rest, go to bed. You deserve it. I'm going to the market straight away today with a roll of cloth, and I'm going to try and sell it to the cloth merchants there." And he rushed out of the house, happy, full of life, full of hope, with his new roll of cloth. He wasn't the only one going to the market that day with cloth. There were other villagers, because all the women in the village wove cloth, and their husbands then went to the market in the nearby big town to sell it to the cloth merchants from the city. One of the neighbours came up to Yohei and said, "Where did you get that beautiful cloth, Yohei? I've never seen a cloth as beautiful as that. My wife has been weaving cloth for years, but she's never produced a cloth as smooth and as soft as that." "Did your wife do that?" And he said, "Yes, my wife has a special gift, and she's woven this roll of cloth. It's taken her 3 days and 3 nights. It's been very hard work." And so all the neighbours walked together to the market, and when they got there, Yohei set up his stall, and he stood on a box, and he held up his roll of cloth, unrolled some of it, and shouted to the merchants, "Roll up, roll up, roll up. Come and see this beautiful piece of cloth, seamless, white, the smoothest and softest cloth you've ever seen." And within seconds, merchants gathered at his stall and looked at the cloth, and they knew about cloth. They knew about textiles, and they'd come from the city, and they eyed it very carefully, came close to it, looked at it, examined it, and then the bidding started. 50 coins, 100, 150, 200, 250, 300, 350, 400. Yohei couldn't keep up with the figures, which were just mounting higher and higher. 450, 500. And then there was silence and a tension. Yohei looked around. Going, gone to that merchant over there. The man came forward, gave Yohei his 500 coins, took the roll of cloth, and thought to himself, this peasant doesn't know much about cloth. I'm going to go to the city with this cloth, and I'll have it cut up, and I'll sell it for 3, 4, 5 times the price I paid him. Obviously, he's a very ignorant person when it comes to cloth. And he went off, very happy that he'd made a great deal for the day. And Yohei was equally happy. He had 500 coins. He'd never had so much money in his life. He started making his way back to his village. Couldn't wait to see his wife again and show her the money he had made. The other villagers gathered round him immediately and said, Yohei, what a successful day. None of us have made that much money from selling our cloth. That is amazing. He was so happy. He said to them all, let's stop at the tavern on the way home. I'm going to buy you all food and drink. It's on me to celebrate on such a special day. Suddenly, he was everybody's friend. They all smiled, they all laughed at his jokes, they all seemed to look up to him and show some respect, the respect that he'd been craving for years. When they got to the tavern, they all sat down at a long table, ate their fill, drank their fill, and when the tavern keeper came over to them, Yohei paid, and it cost him 50 coins, 450 coins left. And he was absolutely pleased with himself. They all went home, went back to their houses. Yohei went back to his modest cottage just outside the village. He went into the kitchen and he put 450 coins on the table. And he said to his wife, these are the coins that one of the merchants from the city gave me for your roll of cloth. It's the most money that I've ever seen or held in my hands. His wife looked at him and said, I am so happy for you, Yohei. This is the first evening you've come home. Smiled, laughed, talked cheerfully and positively about what you're going to do with your life. Tomorrow morning, I'm going to see one of the farmers that I've worked for. He lives just outside the village. And he has a plot of land that he never uses. I'm going to ask him to buy that piece of land. And I'll buy a couple of cows as well. And they can start grazing in that field. And I'm going to become a farmer, just like all the others in this village. She was so happy that evening. She was so happy because Yohei himself was happy about his trip to the market that day. And I'm going to stop there now with the second part of the story of Yohei.